And if they don't, we start bugging them because
Mhm.
sometimes companies that do these unlimited travel policies, some studies show that people take less vacation because they are worried about, taking too much. They don't know what's appropriate.
When the crisis comes at a time when I've already carried this sort of nagging loads, it begins to feel just overwhelming, and
Yes.
it crushes the soul, and it makes me come to work just not, I don't know where to start. And
Hello and welcome. Welcome back to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy, and today is going to be a phenomenal day. I am so excited to introduce to you two incredible gentlemen, Eric Hubbard and Andre Santos, and they are the co-founders of Pain-Free Dental Marketing. Eric brings his phenomenal expertise as a strategic marketing expert from incredible Fortune 300 companies, including Proctor and Gamble. And Andre built his marketing career as a software engineer. And together they really serve so many dental practices across the country and across the world, applying some of the methodologies they've learned from these larger corporations to help dentists grow their practices. And so join me today in welcoming both Eric and Andre. Welcome to the show.
yeah, thank you so much for having us. We're really honored to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. You know, one of the things that drew me to having you both on the show was your concentration and attention to company culture.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have to tell you, Eric, you mentioned something before we started recording today, and it spoke to me because I will never forget when I started my practice from scratch after having sold a previous practice. And I thought, I just want to enjoy every day. I mean, we spend so many hours of our lives in our practices.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that every day I go to work, I'm happy. I'm enjoying myself. I'm surrounding myself with the people I want to spend time with. If I'm taking that time away from my family, I want to be in a culture that I'm absolutely feeling fulfilled by. And you mentioned something similar to me before we got on the call.
Yeah, culture is very important to us. I was blessed to work at places like Procter and Gamble that had amazing culture, and they, you just enjoyed going to work, and you were working with such talented people, and they had, and there's been a lot of talk about the no brilliant jerks and the Netflix sort of movement of things, but Procter and Gamble was in the forefront of that. Is that they really wanted people who they enjoyed and were very good at their jobs and just had a great personality. And then I was recruited away to work at some places that didn't have a great culture, and through there, and when we started building the company, I'm very much an alignment of, we spend somewhere between 25 and 33% of our time at work, depending on the person. And I do not want to work with people that I do not personally enjoy. And I will say, for me, I think everyone on our team, there's 22 of us, they have something that I aspire to. And, I think that there's people who are phenomenal listeners, and that, you just met Ted right before we jumped on. Like, I am so amazed at how he parents his children and the husband he is to his wife. And, you know, I think everyone on the team has something that I very much aspire to. And I love coming to work because we've built the culture. So it never feels like a grind. And if it does, it's a short duration. And yeah, culture, I think, is the most important thing that we focus on.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead, Andre. Tell me
No,
your perspective.
I wanted to add to that because having an amazing culture is not something that just happens by accident. It has to be something that's intentional. And very early on, we locked eyes and said, if in order for us to build the culture that we want to have, it's probably going to cost us something. And
Mhm.
sometimes we have to pass on people that are super talented. Sometimes we have to choose because you can't have great culture only after you make a certain amount of profit or only after you launch certain products. Like for us, we've made it to where culture comes first, and then these other things come later, and it's trickled down to even the goals that we make for the year. They're not revenue goals or profit goals. Is how do we make this an amazing company, take care of our clients, and then the other things seem to just take care of themselves. But sometimes it costs you something, and there's a cost that we really think businesses should be willing to help to pay, because in long term, it's just, you end up much happier.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what have you established are some of the components of creating a culture, a successful,
Mm.
thriving culture?
Yeah, so there's a book that we read together. We have a book club now and again in the company, and it was Culture Ate My Brand or Culture Built My Brand. There's a negative and a positive variation to the book. I don't remember the authors, but the core tenets are there are four pillars that we've established that we very much are aspirational toward, and surprise and delighting clients, caring for your team and teamwork. Um, the fourth one is giving back. Profit is nice,
Compassionate
giving
capitalism.
and compassionate capitalism. And the fourth one is, you want to evolve to be a better human being, a better marketer. So those are the four pillars. And then from the pillars, that's where most companies start. They just sort of have this mission statement. And from those four pillars, then there's this thing called architecture of, so a good example of architecture, like, let's say you say, I care about my team. Well, but then your architecture is we have a very strenuous vacation policy, or maternity leave is not aspirational. But how can you say you care for your team if you have to submit expense reports in triplicate? So part of it is as those cascade down, we put this architecture in place, so we don't have a vacation policy, and we don't even have an expense report policy, and our travel policy is do right by the company. So we've tried to architect the company in a way that we really do take care of our employees. So, and they're little things.
Oh, yeah.
So if an employee donates to a nonprofit of their cause of any kind, we'll match that donation to 1,000. We cover 100% of the employee portion of the medical. So, and all of our employees, whether they choose a PPO plan or an HDHP, we cover 100% of the medical thing. And the architecture has to match those aspirational goals. And from there, it really cascades down to there are artifacts around it. So if you go on a company trip, everyone gets a shirt, and 1 year they get a North Face jacket with a logo on it. And it's the book really breaks down not just how to, Enron had, these wonderful core values in their lobby when, asset was falling down around them. And I like that book resonated with us, Culture Ate My Brand, because it takes, the aspirational, and then it breaks them down into the architecture, and then it breaks it down into artifacts, and it breaks them down into the lore or the stories that we tell. And I like that because a lot of times the stories that get retold in offices around someone did something to get fired, around, they almost cast the culture in a negative light. And if you can't embrace the positive and the negative stories, the stories that get retold to the new people who join, we want to be very intentional about. And so for us, that's really been what resonated the most around not just being aspirational, but how do we take this and tactically apply to the day-to-day life?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think that you made such a great point there. Is sometimes we have these aspirations or these dreams or intentions of supporting our values, and then it kind of falls flat in the day-to-day functioning of it. And I love that attention to making sure that those values are reflected in the architecture of the business. Yeah.
And it wasn't always like that. We started with, we had a standard 2-week vacation policy because we thought that's what you're supposed to do. But then we realized after reading the book that we wanted people to have the same freedom to travel, because we love to travel. But then we were saying, we go ahead and travel, but only do it for 2 weeks at most. Like, that didn't make sense. So we actually inverted that, where everyone has to take at a minimum 2 weeks. And if they don't, we start bugging them, because sometimes companies that do these unlimited travel policies, some studies show that people take less vacation because they were worried about, taking too much. They don't know what's appropriate. And oftentimes it comes back to tone at the top. So if your boss is not taking any vacation, then you don't take any vacation. And so we decided to institute a minimum And we really do highlight people periodically, quarterly almost, of, hey, you haven't taken enough vacation yet, because we want people to feel recharged and to be happy here, and travel and time away with their families is important, an important part of that.
I think you bring up a really good point, though, is employees and owners of businesses really like to have parameters. We like to know what are the boundaries of the sandbox I'm playing in, right? So if I can have unlimited travel, what does that really mean? And I think you brought up a really interesting perspective of sometimes when it seems so unusual or unfamiliar, we just retrude and retreat and actually take no action on it. So have you had to face that with your employees?
We have. Well, even about the, so a good example is we surprise and delight. We feel very important about the relationship we establish with clients is very important. I don't think it replaces the quality of marketing that happens, but I think it is as important, right? Because I think you tend to view people as more successful. I think you tend to view them with higher intent when you like them. So a good example is we've established this process that if it were under $100 and you wanted to send something to an office, be it one of the ladies in the front desk gave birth, whatever it may be, you can just do it. You don't have to ask permission. If it's under $100, send it to the office.
Love it.
That sounds great. The number of times that I get asked, can I send this to the office? And you're just like, oh, and I've started probably taking it too personal. Like, do you not trust that? What do you think is going to happen if you did it? And it sounds silly, but like those little questions just kind of keep coming up around, well, is it okay if I take vacation? Well, gosh, yeah, of course. And I think that is where a lot of people begin to fall down in culture because they feel like it's not working. And it's such a long game we're playing in culture, and it's these micro adjustments. There's very few, in fact, I will say there's no big events. It's a series of mundane activities that just, you have to be so consistent. And over time, we really have gotten to people that for the most part, they'll spend $100, and we still get asked a lot about permission. But yeah, it's a constant, just the small things matter, and being consistent is so important. But yeah, we get people who always asking permission to do the things that, we've done 200 times.
Really cool. Andre, did you notice anything as the co-founder here in terms of your discomfort with following these beautiful parameters of putting culture first? I mean, has there been hesitation for you as the leader to allow yourself to take vacation whenever?
I think in the early days, we had met at GameStop, and so we had some shared experience. And so when we were trying to figure out what kind of company we want to be, we had this common set of, they did it this way. Did we like it? Did we not? And make some changes. So we started from the same place. But yes, Eric was very much a trailblazer on these crazy ideas of let's do this. And at first I was hesitant. A few of them, like for instance, if we do unlimited vacation, will we show up to the office one day and everybody's going to be gone? Well, but the thing is, for these policies to work, you first have to have the right people. And I think we have done a really good job of not only finding really talented people. One of the things that we saw that was not as well executed at GameStop was that sometimes people weren't good fits, but they never really moved on. And it's where we are really good about making sure that the people in this building are really good fits from the culture side of liking people and liking our activities, and we go on a company trip together, and the fun side of culture, but also the responsibility and accountability and candor part of culture. But yes, in the beginning it's a little bit scary to say I'm going to give all this freedom to the people and hope that they're not going to abuse it, but we've never really had an issue with that.
And what about freedom for yourself, Andre? You mentioned that the leader has to be the one that models this behavior. How have you been able to give yourself that freedom?
I think I feel really good about that, and especially because Eric does it too. No, there have been times where I'm going on vacation and Eric is not, and I feel a little bit hesitant because I know that when one of us is not here, the other one has to do a little bit of extra work. But I usually don't have any sort of guilt about it, because when we are here, we work really hard, And we want to set good examples for the team, because I do love to travel, and I want the same thing for them. But if anything, is not so much with the team, but at times has been, is Eric also taking vacation? He is. Okay, then I feel good.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's one area that I do like how we handle our culture. So I'll give you an example. Like I use this as a little excuse, but truthfully, I'm setting culture. Like I say that, my wife and kids want me home at 6 o'clock. At 5:30, I have an alarm that goes off that says, your wife loves you more when you're home on time. And it's me. And the reason I do it is I do want to be home at 6, but at the latest, in fact, but I think that a lot of agencies are so ground down in how many hours they work and client billable hours and all of these things. I want to show the team that I am going home at 6 o'clock every night. And I do take vacation. Andre and I average, somewhere between 3 and 5 weeks, and we celebrate our vacations when we come back. Like we always bring, when Andre went to Japan I'm sorry, gosh, I'm blanking on where Bali. He went through Japan. He brought back a bottle of Japanese whiskey, and we've done these things to highlight that we've celebrated our successes and that we are going home every night. Now, certainly there are times in a year that it requires long hours and hard work, but I think that those need to be the exception rather than the rule. And like the rule is I'm at home at 6 o'clock. I have a 10 and 11-year-old and a wife who loves me. And, I work. Certainly I enjoy my work, but enjoying my work at the expense of my family is not acceptable to me. And I want all of my team home at 6 o'clock.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I just want to honor you, because it really is setting the stage to shift our cultural perception and this insane idea of what work ethic is in our country and not taking care of yourself. So, bravo to both of you for figuring out how to do that so beautifully within your country, within your company, and then also passing that on, because I think it is, in terms of, you mentioned it being the long game, it's going to take a while for us to feel comfortable with this new way of working, because people have experienced something completely different from previous jobs.
Yeah, the grind culture that you mentioned is something that is so popular, and people think that to have success, you have to grind, and it means working 12, 15-hour days. But here, sometimes it's kind of funny when a new person starts. They think that if they work really late and they send emails at night, they're going to show that they're working really hard. In fact, it's the opposite. When we catch people sending emails late at night, we text them like, "Why are you working right now? Why are you logged in?"
There's a phrase
don't want that.
Yeah, there's a phrase I like when people are working real late after hours consistently. It's, can you tell me why you're not able to get your work during the normal business hours? And it shifts the perspective of I'm purposefully trying to kind of pop them back of like, are you being effective during work hours? Like, why are you feeling the need to work this time? Because if there's something preventing you from being effective, I want to know. And that tends to change the paradigm in how they view, working late.
Yeah, I love that. Hey guys, I'm interrupting your podcast episode to let you know about an incredible new program that I'm launching in January of 2023. It is specifically for practitioners in medicine and dentistry to help you rediscover happiness and inner fulfillment within your profession and your life. I remember what it was like for me when years ago I was so depressed and anxious and feeling like I had created and built a treadmill I just couldn't get off of, pushing through every day and wishing my life away. This program is the how of how to find happiness in your practice and in your life, because we know that when we feel good, that's when we can do good. Check out thebizofhappiness.com/radical happiness, or click the link in the show notes. I cannot wait to see you there. And I wonder, have you noticed this tendency in the clients that you work with? I mean, this for me is so abundant in the dental world, of people just burning themselves down, the leader of the ship working right through lunch and then staying after dinner, taking call on the weekends and never getting a break. How have you noticed that in your clients? And do you address it at all? Do you support your clients in that way?
Go ahead, Andre. This is probably.
So we do see, especially if there are startup practices, you do see some of that. And I think to some degree that's expected and understandable. We did some of that early on too. But I think over a long period of time with no sort of light at the end of the tunnel, I think that's super unhealthy. And sometimes that does spill over to us because they are expecting phone calls and emails and things on Saturdays and Sundays and reaching out to our team. And early on, the team members perhaps aren't sure, the culture also of the client is always right. Well, they texted me at 9 o'clock. Am I supposed to respond? And those things. And usually if we notice any unhealthy behavior like that, we have a conversation with our clients and set some good expectations. But the idea is that we're going to really work really hard for you and deliver a good product, but you have to respect some boundaries for our team. And sometimes there's been times as well where we end up connecting them with a resource. Like they need a coach, they need an advisor, they need some people around them to help them get them out of that position. Because I think as a dentist, it's a really tough job to be both a clinician, a marketer, an HR person, a CPA, and still be a partner to someone at home and a parent. And so it's a unique profession that I don't know that other verticals are asking so much of their leaders as dentistry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you've touched on something very unique, but once again, I love what you both are living evidence of is that we still get to make that choice no matter what. And as you've evidenced as entrepreneurs yourselves.
Yeah, I find, and I don't know if it's specific to dentistry. Obviously coming from the software world and the product development world, we were dealing with more MBA type people who were more business centric and pro formas and things like that. But I find that dentists in general do not do a good job of really understanding some frustrations that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And in fact, I've recently stumbled on this theory. It's called the region beta paradox. And it has to do with the concept of let's say that I completely shattered my knee. Well, I would very much go to surgery. I would go to rehab. I would make sure I did strength training. I would be the catastrophicness of the event would spur me to injury. But if I just sprained it and it never got better, I am more likely to just sort of deal with it for years and not do well. And so, paradoxically, I am long-term better off having this catastrophic event than I am just dealing with something very small. And I think that when we have employees that may not pull their weight, but they're the only person who knows something, or we have processes that we don't really like, or someone's scheduling us the way we don't like, or the assistant's not doing something we don't like. I think that dentists are more likely to just sort of white knuckle through it and not really address the happiness of it. So paradoxically, they would be better off to just kick up dust or find a replacement or really spur change in whatever's making them unhappy, because I personally have very little tolerance for dealing with the same sort of unhappiness every day. And so I really try to think about that, what would happen if this person just quit? I try to think in terms of that paradox around what if this were catastrophic? How would I respond? And I try very hard, and Andre does this amazingly well, resolving these nagging issues, because to me, I don't mind the now and again crisis that comes up in being an entrepreneur. But when the crisis comes at a time when I've already carried this sort of nagging loads, it begins to feel just overwhelming, and it crushes the soul, and it makes me come to work just I don't know where to start. And I have all these negative emotions around and because so much of our identity is wrapped up in our business. I mean, there's an extension, I feel terrible as a human being, and I can't, and I know that we can't solve the big crisis that comes, because if we could solve them, they wouldn't happen. But I can solve these little nagging things through my day that add up. So when a crisis comes, I feel empowered and capable versus defeated and unengaged.
That's such a brilliant insight. And I think you've nailed it on the head there. I would love to know from you, how do you become attuned to those things? So let's say you have for decades been the person who ignores those little nagging things. And maybe there's some underlying fears there of confrontation, fear of failure, fear of loss, fear, our body, our minds love familiar, even if the familiar is detrimental to the overall culture or the overall bottom line or the overall happiness. How did you become more attuned to those little nagging inconsistencies?
Well, I've definitely taken my lumps through my career. I mean, I started the company fairly, not a young man. So I took a lot of lumps and had a lot of nagging problems develop that I did not enjoy. But there's a couple of things that I personally do, and I don't really broadcast them, but I do them. Number one, I tend to count how many times I have conversations. And I know that seems silly, but I find that even people will say, "Oh, I don't really care about how we schedule, but I want to do this." And I've noticed on the schedule, and again, I'm talking about, let's say I was uncomfortable scheduling. I think that as humans, we tend to talk about the things that are unsettled or not clear on or something. So I find that the more times that someone brings something up to me, we are clearly not in alignment, because otherwise they probably wouldn't be bringing it up to me. I've never talked about how awesome, I do talk about how awesome it is, but like, I've never contemplated how unhappy I am with Andre, because I'm not unhappy with Andre. But and that's just one of those things to where I think to even trigger the conversation, you have to be unsettled somewhere. So I tend to just sort of mentally count the number of times I have a conversation on a particular topic. The second thing is, and I do this very inconsistent, but I do journal sort of my work day, and not just the activities, but how I felt on those days.
Such a key element.
And I tend to do it at night after the girls go to bed and things like that. But I do tend to just keep a record of what I did, how I felt about it, things like that. And I find over time that does allow me to have identify those little nagging situations. But I think the biggest one is just, if you're having the same conversation with the same person multiple times, I assure you there's frustration there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'll add something to it. The counting thing is something that Eric and I even do with each other. Sometimes I just notice how many times Eric is bringing some same topic that we've already talked about before. And then at some point I'm like, hey, how do you really feel about this? Because you've made some comment in passing X number of times. But I think the one thing that I wanted to add to that I think everyone should do is set a little bit of time aside, whether it's each week or every couple of weeks, to think about the business itself, to work on the business, not be in the business. And so Eric and I we call it a special time. So every Friday, we try to leave the office and go to a coffee shop and talk about the team, talk about the culture, talk about our happiness number. We talk about on a scale from 1 to 10, how happy are you right now with how things are going at work, your emotional energy sort of thing. Because it's easy to be so busy with work day in and day out and never have those conversations and never have time to think about those topics. And, this is something that if you have someone in the office that you trust, or your partner at home, find some time to dedicate to improving your quality of life.
Wow. What I'm hearing is a really key factor, and that is paying attention to how you feel and honoring how you feel. I mean, that is such an important aspect, because we tend to think of running a successful business. We don't imagine that matters about how we feel about it, or our feelings, taking our feelings into consideration. And I really admire that you've actually carved time out and scheduled for it, not just for the odd retreat every year to then talk about our feelings, but really every single week. I mean, that's that really speaks to how high of a value that places in the culture of your business. Where we tend to put our attention is where our intention is really, where we put our intention is where we put our attention. And you really are following through in that with your business. And I think that's highly admirable. Really cool. Really cool. Have there ever been moments where you've doubted this perspective? I mean, I don't see many businesses doing this. Have you ever been moments where you thought, wow, maybe if we didn't go out to coffee every Friday, we could increase our bottom line a little bit more?
I do, just like anyone, I think we lose our way sometimes. We have definitely hired people that we felt, gosh, I'm not sure they're a good fit, but we need that role. We have lost our way. We've taken accounts that we thought, okay, they're the marriage between operations and marketing is very, very, very tight. And as a marketer, it becomes very difficult to do your job if the operations of a practice aren't in alignment. And we've had offices where we're like, gosh, I don't think they run a good shop, but it'd be nice to pick up this big contract or this big deal. And we've made some things like that. And it has always cost us way more than we anticipated. So I think, so yes, we have failed at those things along the way, but we do keep a log of sort of those failures, and not to go back and be frustrated about them, but like as a reminder that when we stray away from the man I want to be, or the company we want to be, it is always way more costly than it seems. And yes, I love, beating record revenue profits, and I love all those things, and we do, but I think that, there's a saying I like, that the person who enjoys the walk will walk further than the person who likes the destination. And I think that it is, if you can just remind yourself that if you can find a way to enjoy your day-to-day life, you're going to go further than it just, I want a $4 million practice, or I want to, I want to get to only doing, cosmetic dentistry. I think if you found a way to enjoy the walk and the journey, and I think the destination will come, but I don't think the opposite's true.
Yeah.
And I think, I feel incredibly lucky to have found the partner that I have. And I think most businesses don't do this, because you got to start with your why. Why is it that you have a business at all? What are you trying to do with your life? What, you said earlier, your attention and your intention. Our why from the very beginning was to build an amazing place to work. We were leaving a place that we were not happy working at, and that was the number one goal. It was never about how many clients we have, or how many employees we have, and how much revenue, or how much profit. Those things were never our why. And so I think that's why for us, it becomes a little easier than perhaps other folks to create this culture, because that is the most important thing. And there has been times where we had more revenue and we had more profit and we were less happy. And so, it's easy choice to make now, because when we have stayed true to our why, all the other things worked out. Because when the team is happy, they take care of the clients. They spend money wisely. They support us when we need them to. They bring us back to the path when we stray, because that strength is there.
So cool. I cannot tell you what a joy it has been chatting with both of you here today. It is so refreshing and so exciting to see. I think we often hear people preach about these concepts, but it's really unique to see a company that's actually putting it into place and then really standing true to those values that they've set. So thank you for what you're doing in the world.
Yeah. Go ahead, Andre.
Go ahead, Eric.
No, please.
So thank you for that. And I wanted to add here that this podcast is called The Business of Happy. So you might be wondering, what is the business side of all of this? Why would you do that? Why would you not prioritize revenue? Why would you not do these things? And I think that the advice there is, from a business perspective, whatever company you have, whether it's a dental practice or a marketing agency or any other business, the thing that you do can be copied. Just think of Uber, right? They launched Uber, 6 months later, there was Lyft. So the things that you're doing, someone else can do as well. That's not what makes your business unique. The only thing no one can copy is your people, is your culture. And so investing that, it really is, from a business perspective, setting you apart, investing in a differentiator that you can never lose. And so there's a lot of investment, mindset people that perhaps don't see this, but if you look at it, that you're creating something that can't be copied, then it makes a lot of business sense.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So while we're on the subject, I do need to ask you each my favorite question that I ask of all my interviews. And that is, Andre, I'll start with you. What is your definition of happiness?
I think happiness is the freedom to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with the people you want to do it with.
Beautiful. Eric, I can see you going inward for this question.
I think for me, happiness is having a purpose that you're passionate about and having the family and friends around to support you as you chase that purpose. I think it's knowing who you want to be and having the family around you and the friends around you love you for who you and push you on to chase, whatever that goal is.
Spoken as a true creative entrepreneur at heart. I feel you, my friend. I feel you. Oh, so awesome. I want to tell our audience also about you have an upcoming presentation that you're doing at an incredible conference. Would Andre tell us a little bit about what you're doing this May and how we can find out more about you?
Yeah, so we're going to be speaking at the All-Star Dental Conference in Florida, and that is on May 20th. And this conference is for dentists who are looking to connect with other dentists and have a mastermind kind of conference to talk about their business and how to make it better. And we're going to be there talking about, from a marketing perspective, what they can do to make their business grow. And so that's where we'll be at next. And as far as finding out more about us, the easiest place is to go to painfreedentalmarketing.com. We're also on social media at Pain-Free Dental Marketing in most places. And, we're happy to talk about culture, talk about marketing. We just like to talk. So don't be shy.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I valued most in my practice is aligning with other businesses and partnerships where our values were aligned and saw life the same way. And so to all of you listeners who are listening to this episode and thinking, gosh, that's how I want to run my business, those are the kinds of people I want to work with, I highly recommend looking up Pain-Free Dental Marketing and giving Eric and Andre a call, because this is how we create the culture. This is how we stay in an integrity with our higher selves when we work with like-minded people and like-valued people. And once again, I just want to say thank you for setting that tone for us, both of you, Eric and Andre.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been an amazing chat.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. And thank you to all of you for listening on today's episode. And remember, when you feel good, that's when you can do good. Bye-bye.